welcome. You're watching Education News Network, and today we're here to discuss the topic how to prevent schools from becoming the new COVID hotspots when they reopen. And for that, we have with us a panel of eminent educators who will be joining us in this panel discussion. So let's welcome our first panelist of the day. We have Dr. Preeti Shrimal, the principal of Billabong High International School. We welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Our next panelist is Ms. Anisha Sahni, the primary school principal of Prometheus School. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you so much. A very good afternoon to everyone.
Our next panelist is Mrs. J.S. Vanitha, the principal of PSS EMR Davangere. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you for making me part of this, even though I'm a little far away. I'm sure we all stand together to be a wonderful team.
We're glad to have you on our show, ma'am. Our next panelist is Mr. K. Balaji, the principal of Meena Sankar Vidyalaya, Tirunelveli. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
And our last panelist is Ms. Ritu Anchal, the principal of St. Joseph's International School, Haryana. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Really honored to be part of this discussion.
Thank you all for being here today. So, to discuss our topic, let's invite our first panelist, Dr. Preeti Shrimal. So, ma'am, how do you think schools can be prevented from becoming the new COVID hotspots once they reopen?
So once again, good afternoon to all the panelists. And all of us right now are struggling with this huge challenge of how to open the schools to have a proper resumption plan so that we are able to brace ourselves and prevent our schools from becoming COVID hotspots, because we all know that these are young students and they are basically going to be carriers. They may not themselves be infected, but definitely they could be asymptomatic and they could be carriers and posed to be a threat. So in my opinion, we need to have a readiness plan in place. And as far as my school is concerned, there are certain areas. We have drafted a 6-point readiness plan, which includes preparing the building, the infrastructure, having a proper cleaning plan, the housekeeping, the plan, the disinfection, which is so very, very important, of all the touch points, of all the access areas. There has to be proper sanitization and disinfection of all the classrooms, of all the furniture, once the children enter the class and after they leave the class. Secondly, another important factor in preparing the infrastructure in the school is to have a staggered opening. So we can divide the classes, the entire school, into 2 groups. So one group attends online and the other group attends offline. And we reduce our school hours to prevent too much of contact with the students. The second is the regular screening and monitoring. So from entry to the exit, we have to screen everybody, from the student to the teacher to the vendors who are visiting to all the visitors who are coming. Everybody has to be screened, and we need to have the non-contact thermal screens to be there. And where students are concerned, we need to have a health declaration form. We need to have modification in our curriculum plan. Like I said, we need to reduce the school timings. And there has to be, lastly, there has to be continuous monitoring, reporting, and communication with all the stakeholders. That is extremely important. So I think if all these various factors are taken into consideration and if they are implemented to the T, we could prevent our schools from becoming COVID hotspots.
Thank you, ma'am. So, Ms. Anisha Sahni, could you tell us about your opinion on the topic, please?
Sure. Thank you so much. Quite a lot, Ms. Preeti's, Dr. Preeti's already shared. And I think when the more and more schools are looking at reopening, the thought of they might just become the incubators of the large coronavirus outbreak is quite a concern amongst parents, amongst the teaching community. But I think, it just outweighs the fact that the children have been really sitting at home and their social emotional well-being has really been affected. Now that we're coming back with a plan. When we started, the whole thought behind the readiness of the school, of course, was the safety of children. The safety was divided into 2 aspects: the physical safety of children and the mental support that the schools need to provide, the mental safety and the mental support. So when we broke down that what are the things that we need to look at physical safety of children, first came educating that what is that they need to do to prevent themselves. What is this all about? How do you catch infections? What is it that you need to do? And then the role of the school, as an institute, what are the measures that I am taking? So from the point the child enters the school to the point the child exits the school, wherever they go, we looked at all the systems, the arrival system, the departure system. The arrival system, as much as you tell your students that, 1 arm distance or a 2 feet distance or wear your mask, the moment they see their friends who they've not seen for about a year, the hugs come into place and the whole excitement of going close to them comes in place. So you have your teachers on duty, you've got your boxes marked, you very gently written in child appropriate language, and good children who cannot read, the little ones, having those the picture language there through the images, that maintain distance, keep yourself safe, and giving those repeated reminders. Children are children, they will do what they have to do, but as educators, constantly reminding, just by communicating once that wear your mask, maintain that distance doesn't help. You got to have signages all around the school, exactly what Dr. Preeti had also said. So also schools have to look at their own capacity of operating safely. How huge is your campus? What is the student strength? Do you need to stagger timing? Avoiding unnecessary exposure by thinking, on usual days, on common days, children would go to the cafeteria for their meals, all meals, breakfast, lunch, and the afternoon snack. Whenever you answer the why of what you are doing and why they're expected to do what you're asking them to do, when they understand, they also cooperate. Communication with parents as to what you're doing and what are the safety protocols that you're following, what are the parents expected to do. Avoiding all the meetings within the school premises, but here is a time that we need to also monitor how many people can be inside the campus. Are they required? Are they not required? The behavioral aspect has to be considered, considering the age and capacity of students to understand and respect measures put in place. And lastly, I'd like to say that schools to be also providing with vital information on hand washing, how to do that, how to prevent yourselves, how to prevent your families, facilitate mental health support, help to prevent that stigma and discrimination by encouraging students to be kind to each other and avoid stereotypes when talking about the virus. So in an educational institute, when they step in, reminding them of all the safety protocols that they've been following, screening temperatures, whoever is entering the campus, not just the campus, even when they board the bus, equipping the school drivers and conductors and the DDs or the guards or the teachers on the bus, like, ensuring that you screen the child. It's not just about temperature, anybody coughing, anybody showing symptoms. It's okay to tell the parent that, hey, I'm not quite sure whether he can be in school today, and I hope you understand. And it may be a symptom, it may not be a symptom, but can we risk it? So cooperation at all levels, cooperation within the, all the stakeholders of the school, understanding the reasons. If a child is refused or denied entry into school, there is a reason behind it. And the reason behind is not just safety of one kid, it is the safety of all the children in the campus at that very moment. So as school heads, I think monitoring and striking a balance amongst all these aspects is very, very important. And like I said, that the schools can do as much as they can do. Beyond that, the trust of parents as well. Like if you've had an international travel, I trust my parent body as when the parents send the child to the school, they trust me of the safety protocols that I'm following. Similarly, I have to make them understand that when you are sending your child to school, I am having that trust that nobody in your family is showing symptoms, the child's well, he's not had fever, cold or cough, or any other family member has not had that. Conversations help. And once you have those conversations between all stakeholders, I think we can maintain good standards of safety in schools as well.
Thank you, ma'am. So, Ms. Vanita, can we hear your thoughts, please?
Okay. Good evening, one and all. Nice to have each and every one of you this afternoon. Well, I represent a boarding school, so our challenges are totally different. It's not easy at all to get the kids in, and there's a lot of work involved as far as this is concerned. So it was quite strenuous. And prior to this, we had to take a lot of initiatives to make sure our teachers were well equipped, well trained, well prepared. And more so, we had to house all of them here itself with us within the campus for a good long time. And we did that for about 5 to 6 months, which also helped us with the online classes that went on. Along with this was the other factors that we had to get ready was how do we place to get kids once inside. They were all coming in from various places, not just in the district, also the state and elsewhere too. So a lot of challenges involved, and as rightly quoted by what Dr. Preeti said, we did have our checklist ready, and keeping that in mind, as in when we started taking them class-wise, section-wise, we broke it. So we gave it a number a day. We put it around 20, 25 a day. We didn't want to cross many. Once they were in, we took them in, and the entire, what I meant was the parents were not allowed. There was a earmarked area where they would come, drop their child, and from there on, they would be into our hands. So at that particular point, we made sure the children came with their RPT set tests ready, so that we did not have to send them again. Of course, in case of emergencies, when we had to send them the next day, we did that follow-up with our paramedical staff within the school. So once they were inside, they were taken in, they were quarantined. So we had kept a few hostels separate for girls and boys. For the quarantine, we kept them separately, and then on, we moved them after a period of 6 to 7 days into the mainstream hostels as well as their classrooms. The online mode was still prevalent, and once they were in, well, challenges were totally different from this point upward regarding the basic sanitization that has to happen, daily routines, like how normal thorough checks that used to happen as a chart that we used to check to see everything is done. This was a priority because we really need to see this when kids come in and move out of the classrooms. So this was done on a regular stream. Since it's a residential school, our eating arena, that's the dining hall, that's a real challenge. Again, we made them into batches. We split them into 3 to 4 batches, depending on their age groups and how they had to move in and out, and all that was taken care of. Specific places marked for them to be seated, food served, and everything there, so that either way there was no interaction as such between the children. Rightly said by Mrs. Saini just now, handling smaller children was actually difficult, especially class 6. Older boys and girls at a latter stage of probably 9th upward, you could tell them and they could sort of follow. But the smaller children, it was very difficult initially. So we literally had to police them to see that they were not staying together. The dormitories were separated, but still we ensured that their study area or the study halls where they went back straight after their class sessions were taken care of, activity was given to them. There was no sporting activity happening in the school, but we ensured, since our campus is a huge campus, we were able to facilitate all of this with the different fields that we had, where we could put the kids in there separately class-wise, because you need to keep them occupied. Going back home was something, but staying with us is totally different. And we engaged them in separate classes from 6 to 8 p.m. in the evening, and then sort of wrapped up the day. So the sessions were pretty long, procedures were followed, and rightfully, thank you so much for being a CBSE school, constant support from the board, the SOPs that were drafted and given to us well in advance, which all of us, I'm sure all of us have followed, and in fact gone extra miles to do everything that we can take care of. And mostly, since all of us are responsible for every child, whether it's a boarding school or a day school, I'm sure as heads of the institution, we have a lot of burden on our heads to manage each and every child as well as a staff member. Each and every one is important to us. So it is 3 areas: students, staff, support staff, all 3 together in sync to make sure that everything is running on a smooth sail. And of course, medical facilities have been doubled as such, because we need to keep them ready for any exigencies that arise, irrespective of what it is, accessible to hospitals close by and ambulances present. We were able to manage to pull, and we've been going on quite well. The student staff or the support staff, all of us have gotten into our routine of a proper set timetable to make sure we run smooth and no one is at a risk. And of course, with the second wave coming in, we are making preparations further ahead to see how we take care of all of this again. And thank you everyone once again, and thank you, Ms. Kumar. Thank you for being part of it.
Thank you, ma'am. So, Mr. Balaji, could you tell us how schools should be prevented from becoming the new COVID hotspots?
Certainly. I want to focus on few points where actually practically where the schools will get stuck, or what are the gray areas for the schools when the schools are getting reopened full-fledged, probably in the month of June or July. First thing is, all of you might have seen that even this year, which was a truncated year to a large extent, attendance was not compulsory even for board-bound children. So even when assuming that the second wave will continue for the next few months, essentially we cannot force compulsory attendance of children to the school. So that's the one area where the schools have to focus now, because the schools are facing a predicament of running the physical school, as well as the schools have to run the online classes also, as they were doing most of the time this year. So the first challenge to the schools is, even when the schools reopen, it will not be what you can say, how the schools normally run before the COVID, how the school ran. It will not be like that. So if that being the case, the school should have a plan in place to cater to the learning needs of these children who prefer to stay at home. So it will be hybrid class for the schools. Whatever the teacher is teaching in the physical classroom has to be, what you can say, we have to be live. The regular classrooms of the schools should be, till now the drawing rooms of the teachers, they are teaching from their home live on various platforms like Zoom or Google Meet or Microsoft Team or whatever it is. So even from the classroom setup, it will become essential for the schools to what you can say, webcast or telecast, whatever we can say the technical term. The children have to provide the live wire of what is happening in the school, because those children cannot lag behind. So this is one first challenge schools used to face. Second is, as all the eminent panelists already discussed, all the SOPs are in place. Schools will be monitoring them with a hawk's eye, but sensitizing the parents and sensitizing the children is very crucial, because already the children missed a formal schooling for almost a year now, not more than a year now rather. So we are seeing a lot of behavioral changes in the children. They have become more stubborn. They are also in a kind of, they have also reached a boiling point, because they are not allowed to move freely outside and may mingle with their friends, interact with their neighbors. Children are also suffering silently, unlike us. So the emotional quotient of the child has to be taken care. Moreover, the daily routines of the children, the biological clock of the children has changed a lot. But bringing them back on rail for these daily routines also will become a big challenge for the parents as well as to the school. Thirdly, we should sensitize the parents, and the parental support is very crucial in making the schools to back to normalcy, in making the schools to reach normalcy, by ensuring that not only all the staff members of the school are getting vaccinated, but also all the close family circle members of the child should get vaccinated. So as a school, we all should ensure that. Thirdly, some 30 to 40% of the syllabus has been reduced in the current academic year. We don't know what will be going to happen for the upcoming academic year also. Even though all the schools have tried their best and ensured there is not much lagging behind in the learning of the children, but still definitely children may be lagging behind in writing, children may be lagging behind in reading or in social skills, which they normally bridge when they are into a physical classroom. So that area also has to be get patched up by the schools by giving extra focus on these soft skills of the children, which will be possible only when they are in the midst of the teachers in the school environment. It cannot happen the child is sitting elsewhere and the teacher is sitting somewhere else and teaching them online. When the schools reopen, the real test for the schools will actually start at that time only. So as I told earlier, it will be a hybrid learning, hybrid teaching is on the pipeline for the schools. As a school administrator, we should be prepared for catering to the children, teaching in the physical classroom in our school environment, as well as teaching them online. Unless we prepare for that, it will be very difficult for us to bring all the children onto the board.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Ritu, could you tell us, please, how to prevent schools from becoming the new COVID hotspots once they reopen?
Hello, everyone. And we all know that COVID-19 has forced the world and especially the schools to have a good pause. However, this pandemic is not going to over very soon, and it is going to stay with us. With that, if we have started returning to our normal lives, and we need to start returning, our children also need to start returning to their normal lives. My previous speakers have proved that yes, schools, when we are given a chance and we have the children in school, so all the measures which are possible, schools are taking them, and children are returning to a normal schooling. I would like to add, all these debates and discussions have lead us that, it is a well-known apprehension that we all feel children are not safe in school. But if the standard procedures are in practice, are in place, and are followed, are checked thoroughly, so definitely children will be in safe hands. They are safe in schools, because we must understand that education is an essential activity. And if we ignore physical schooling, it has long term implications on students' life. And I'm sure that once children start going to school regularly, it will definitely return it is definitely a return of normalcy in a way no other event can bring this normalcy to their lives. And we have vast evidences suggest that children are not impacted by COVID as severely as adults. But as my previous speakers also have said, but they can be potential asymptomatic transmitters. So, and on the other hand, some of the scientists have acknowledged that infections are happening in all the ages and all the age groups. And we had to have more accurate, thoughtful, and policies in place in school to have our children back to the normal lives. Only the preventive measures are good hygienic practices, as my previous speakers have told. The procedures, the sanitization of surfaces, hand washing, cough etiquettes, and monitoring entries and exits in the school, boarding and deboarding of school buses, getting the school buses sanitized, then these can be the major weapons to fight against this COVID. And I feel that parents also have to become partner in this exercise. My previous speakers have already spoken on this. It is their duty, if they have any infected person at home, they should not send the child to school. So the way they trust, my previous speaker also have told that the way they trust us, that we will be following the standard operating procedures, the same way we also expect the parents shall also be following, because the children, they follow the adults at home, they follow the way their parents behave, they follow the way their parents practice the procedures. So we are also following most of the practices which are already discussed, of social distancing and social protocols, then regular health checkups, monitoring the temperatures, and monitoring the entries and exits, and getting the things disinfected, then maintaining the distances, following the staggered timetables for the school. And and having a regular check on this. So if we have the regular check, I am sure that the schools, we can prevent our schools to become new corona hotspots.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you all for your very insightful thoughts. So, my first question goes out to Dr. Preeti. Ma'am, people are now socializing, like restaurants are open, cinema halls are open, people are going on holidays, and we just heard Ms. Ritu say that parents are still worried about sending their kids to. Why is it only with schools that they're scared? Like, why are schools being termed as a COVID hotspot and not the other places?
I think that's a very valid question. So this new normal is only applicable to schools. And I fully agree, and I'm sure all my educators will agree with me that it's when it comes to school, not only is the public reluctant, but I think even the government officials are reluctant in terms of opening. Where I stay in Gujarat, we were very happy when we were given the permission and we were granted certain SOPs to open high schools and of course then middle school. But then with the surge which happened and with the second or the third wave, the schools were shut down, but everything else was normal. I mean, there was absolutely no way that there were SOPs implemented or there were curbs imposed. So yes, I agree with the fact that this is a public mindset, that schools are areas and places probably because you have a heterogeneous group of students coming to the classes or coming to the physical scenario. So probably they feel that one reason could be because of the heterogeneous group which is coming, and we cannot trace or track what kind of an infection or exposure they are bringing with them. Second could be the staff factor, and the third could be that because of the kind of visitors we have, the vendors we have, and the basic infrastructure. I think that's what is scaring the public from sending, and that's probably another reason. Yes, the chances of infection spreading becomes very high in a classroom. When they are sitting in close proximity, we can't prevent them from touching, from hugging, from touching each other's things. When we are using the washrooms, we will try our level best, but all of us know it's a logistical nightmare to ensure that, yes, hygiene standards are going to be maintained. All schools are going to take care of extreme sanitization, disinfection. So I think these are the areas which are scaring the public and which is also causing a concern that are we really ready? So yes, they can go for holidays where the same thing is happening. But here the responsibility is the parents' responsibility. Here the complete shift comes on the school, on the administration, on the leadership team. So in a way, they feel that yes, the threat and the fear factor is a little more deepened and a little more heightened when it comes to school, but not for holidays or for vacationing or for social gatherings. So yes, we all of us are worried, and we really hope that the trust, the faith, and the kind of the bond which is there gets more deepened, and we are able to start our schools soon, with of course complete support and cooperation of the entire parent community.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Anisha, you spoke about the communication, the importance of communication with parents. So could you please elaborate a little on that as to how you establish that communication and what are some of the concerns that parents have and how you address them?
Yeah, I would love to talk about this, because starting from when we considered reopening school, when we had the state directive that we could, and we reopened on the 15th of March, sending a letter out that this is our plan, we're all ready, and sending that letter out, gaining their faith and showing them, ensuring that all the safety protocols will be followed. That was the first point of communication that we had with the parents. Second was not just declaring that we are opening and you send your child. It was very important to take their consent. It was important to take their viewpoints. So we rolled out a Microsoft form asking about what do they think, what date do they think, even though we have the orders to open, do you think we should wait? Involving them in whatever decisions we take has kind of really helped us, formulating those policies and practices, because when it was done with the parents, they also take the accountability of having it in. So it all depends on the capacity of a school. We as a school could separate venues. We restricted the number of students in a class because we all know that outdoors is safer than indoors, and indoors you have to ensure some airflow and some ventilation. And how do you do that? Even though if you separate children like and have them at a distance of about, the required distance, you have to restrict the number as well. So once all this information was sent out to parents, it was important for us to also show it to them, because all that they did was drop the child at the gate, pick them up, because transport again was restricted. We did not give it to the very little ones. We were running the buses in 50% capacity. So we sent out another letter out to them with the photographs of what was happening. So showing all those pictures was a reassurance to the parent that the school is doing what they've said. The school is standing to whatever they have committed, and all that is happening. So regular communication and updates, I would say, has helped us gain their trust. And in fact, there were students who opted for online classes, looking at what was happening in school through that regular communication which we've done. Most of them have opted for physical return to school in the next cohort, which is the 5th of April. Taken every feedback very, very seriously, and if at all we've acted on that, we have communicated it to the parent. This is a new change. You would see, until the last week this is what was happening. Now when you come to school, you would notice all of this. So it just keeps them apprised of what the school is following, and the children are safe, because we say that we are following safety protocols. How safe are the children with that? That communication is very important.
Thank you, ma'am. So, Mr. Balaji, could you tell us that every school is taking precautions that have been, SOPs have been issued by the government, but what are some of the special measures that your school is taking?
Yeah, of course. Actually, we made up our mind to have only sessions not more than 3 hours in a day. So that in one way is very much helpful for us now. And we want to reduce the time the child spends in the school to maximum 3 hours, not more than 3 hours, so that the child need not carry any lunch or breakfast to the school. So that's one area, as already all the panel members have discussed. What are the extensive measures, safety precautions you have to take if the child is permitted to eat in the school. So that is one area we have plugged in. Second is, as I told earlier in my earlier description, when I was speaking to you earlier, I told we will be conducting the online classes as usual as we are doing now, till
Will be following the
normalcy is
hybrid
restored,
model.
or at least a vaccine for under 18 is introduced, and we ensure all our children are getting vaccinated. So unless my strong belief is normalcy will not be restored to a school at all as long as a vaccine for the child is available and our children are getting vaccinated. So as a school, we should be, we have to be pragmatic, and we should be expecting hope for the best and prepare for the worst. That should be our policy in the days to come.
Ms. Vanita, you mentioned that your school is a boarding school, right? So could you take us through the precautionary measures that's taken at your school, and how you're ensuring the good health of your students who are living on campus?
Okay. To begin with, actually, since we really had the time with us the past 7 or 8 months, we had a very structured SOP written. Prior to that, we first equipped the school very well. All the areas, starting from the main gate to the respective hostels, to the school, to the dining hall, to all the major areas where the connect between the kids would happen. This was taken care of as a priority. Basic necessities, along with all the additional whatever we could provide from our side. In fact, we've gone extra miles to ensure cameras have been fixed to make it even more feasible. So it's constantly being monitored. We've appointed people to check on that too. Now, this as far as all the SOP standardized procedures that had to be maintained by a school was taken care of. Post this, we got in touch with the parents. Initially, we sent SMSs, and then through WhatsApp messages, we tried to get them across. We made small videos in the school with the staff. Since I was a residential school and we had the kids here, the staff kids here, we utilized that and we made little videos, and we started sending these videos as what could be a 4C setup of a school. So what could be done and how we are prepared and how their kids would be once they come in. So these kind of things were taken care of. So we gave in small video clips for them to sort of have a glimpse of the school, as well as all the measures taken by the school to make sure how safe and secure the kids were. Apart from this, the other thing that we took care of was the specifications given. Now, the SOP is given by the board. There were things that were happening very regularly, both at the district level. We are in a district of the state, Karnataka. So at the district level, the regular visits that used to happen as precautionary measures, the DC coming in for checks. Along with it, we also had the block education officer himself being involved, along with the other staff who would come in regularly. So all these checks started happening way up October, November. They would come regularly to see all of this is taken care of. And we were waiting for the nod when the actual school would begin. So we were already preset with all of this. Parents were gradually, along with the online classes that were going on, in between, probably once a month, once in 15 days, depending on how the scenario was as we moved on from May 2020. We took up each aspect very seriously, coming in from the admin as well as the government, put everything together and constantly kept in touch with the parents. So our parents were kind of prepared from the beginning as to where and when and how the kids would come in, what were our measures, how prepared are we, and how safe their kids would be, and more so all the prior tests that they would complete even before they get into the school. So we ensured that the child would finish his RT-PCR test before he comes in. After having been home for 10 long months and then coming to school was a different take altogether. Mr. Balaji did mention about the EQ of the child. Well, yes, very much, especially in the boarding school, it's very difficult. So the EQ, we need to maintain a very good balance. So we did train our teachers too to make sure they would handle these aspects first. So first and foremost, made the teachers to understand that you treat each one as your own, probably your own child here. That's how you would take care of each and every one as they come in. So these preparations were going on and on. The noble profession that all of us are in, our teachers also did understand the seriousness outside and how important it is even for them to go out to socialize and what an impact it would be once they come back along to be with the kids back here. So there's been a lot of cooperation from them. I think my heartfelt thanks to the entire team of teachers, not just in our school here, the entire fraternity in our entire country. In these challenging times, with the limited resources available in many schools, I think all the entire fraternity of teachers have stood the test of time to stand by this pandemic. And maybe we're talking about the Spanish flu when we started, COVID started. So we started going back, giving incidences of the previous epidemics and pandemics that occurred. Probably we've created history as such when the front runners, whoever did so much, whether it was a medical or the people outside there taking care of us in every other form. I guess the next in line, due honor and respect to the teaching fraternity, the entire lot for taking schools to their doorsteps, virtually into their homes, into their living rooms, and making life possible for their kids again, to make sure that all of us have stayed together. So I think hats off to each and every teacher. My heartfelt thanks to each and every panelist here as the principals here and heading your institution, the challenges that you face, and to everyone at large. It's been a very, very testing time for all of us, but I guess we've all stood the test of time.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you all for being a part of this panel discussion today. And with that, we come to the end of this interesting panel discussion. I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as I did while being a part of it. Due to time constraints, we could only take a couple of questions, but if you have any additional queries, do write to us and we'll be happy to take them offline. For more such videos, do log on to our website, theENN.com, and don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. For now, signing off, Nitya.